Hello, it's me, Mike, with HPDS. This video will be a reading and a study of Exodus chapter 12. That's Exodus chapter 12. Before I get started, I'll go ahead and read the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Okay, so this video, like I said, is Exodus 12. And if you remember, before I get into it, I'll give you a little brief summary of where we're at. We are at the end of the plagues, and we're about to get into the crux of this book, the actual Exodus, where they flee Egypt. But Exodus 11 was the plague on the firstborn foretold. So back in the last chapter, we had Moses going up to Pharaoh, and he told the Pharaoh, about midnight, all this is going to happen. It's going to be the death of the firstborn and so forth. So that is actually where we are now. Let me go ahead and bring up something real quick. All right. So Exodus 12, the Passover. This is what you're going to be looking for. We're going to be looking from verses 1 through 13. We have the first Passover. And then verses 14 through 28, we're going to see that we're going to read about the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And then verses 29 to about 30 is the actual 10th plague, death of the firstborn. And 31 through 42, the Exodus begins. And verses 43 through the end of the chapter 51, we're going to see instructions for the Passover. So that's what we're going to be looking for. Let me go ahead and start reading through the chapter now. Let's see. Okay. And the Lord spoke unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for an house. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb. And the lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. Ye shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats. And ye shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month. And the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. And they shall take of the blood, and strike it on the 2 side posts, and on the upper doorposts of the houses, wherein they shall eat it. And they shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire, and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. Eat not of it raw, nor sodden at all with water, but roast with fire, his head with his legs, and with the purtenance thereof. And ye shall let nothing of it remain until the morning, and that which remaineth of it until the morning ye shall burn with fire. And thus shall ye eat it, with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and ye shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast. And against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord. And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the house where ye are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. And this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and ye shall keep it a feast to the Lord throughout your generations. Ye shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. 7 days shall ye eat unleavened bread. Even the first day ye shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. And in the first day there shall be an holy convocation, and in the seventh day there shall be an holy convocation to you. No manner of work shall be done in them, save that which every man must eat it, that only may be done of you. And ye shall observe the feast of unleavened bread. For in this selfsame day have I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore shall ye observe this day in your generations by an ordinance forever. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, at even ye shall eat unleavened bread, until the 21st day of the month at even. 7 days shall there be no leaven found in your houses. For whosoever eateth that which is leavened, even that soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he be a stranger or born in the land. Ye shall eat nothing leavened. In all your habitations shall ye eat unleavened bread. Then Moses called for all the elders of Israel, and said unto them, Draw out, and take you a lamb according to your families, and kill the Passover. And ye shall take a bunch of hyssop, and dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and strike the lintel and the two side posts with the blood that is in the basin. And none of you shall go out at the door of his house until the morning. For the Lord will pass through to smite the Egyptians. And when he seeth the blood upon the lintel and on the two side posts, the Lord will pass over the door, and will not suffer the destroyer to come in unto your houses to smite you. And ye shall observe this thing for an ordinance to thee and to thy sons forever. And it shall come to pass, when ye come to the land which the Lord will give you, according as he hath promised, that ye shall keep this service. And it shall come to pass, when your children shall say unto you, What mean ye by this service? That ye shall say, It is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover, who passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt when he smote the Egyptians, and delivered our houses. And the people bowed the head and worshipped. And the children of Israel went away, and did as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron, so did they. And it came to pass that at midnight the Lord smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on his throne unto the firstborn of the captive that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of cattle. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants, and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where there was not one dead. And he called for Moses and Aaron by light, and said, Rise up, and get you forth from among my people, both ye and the children of Israel, and go, serve the Lord as ye have said. Also take your flocks and your herds as ye have said, and be gone, and bless me also. And the Egyptians were urgent upon the people, that they might send them out of the land in haste. For they said, We be all dead men. And the people took their dough before it was leavened, their kneading troughs being bound up in their clothes upon their shoulders. And the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses, and they borrowed of the Egyptians jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent unto them such things as they required, and they spoiled the Egyptians. And the children of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 on foot that were men, beside children. And a mixed multitude went up also with them, and flocks and herds, even very much cattle. And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough, which they brought forth out of Egypt. For it was not leavened, because they were thrust out of Egypt, and could not tarry, neither had they prepared for themselves any victual. Now the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. And it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the selfsame day it came to pass, that all the hosts of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt. It is a night to be much observed unto the Lord for bringing them out from the land of Egypt. That is the night of the Lord to be observed of all the children of Israel in their generations. And the Lord said unto Moses and Aaron, This is the ordinance of the Passover. There shall no stranger eat thereof. But every man's servant that is bought for money, when thou hast circumcised him, then shall he eat thereof. A foreigner and an hired servant shall not eat thereof. In one house shall he be eaten. Thou shalt not carry forth aught of the flesh abroad out of the house, neither shall ye break a bone thereof. All the congregation of Israel shall keep it. And when a stranger shall sojourn with thee, and will keep the Passover to the Lord, let all his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and keep it. And he shall be as one that is born in the land, for no uncircumcised person shall eat thereof. One law shall be to him that is homeborn, and unto the stranger that sojourneth among you. Thus did all the children of Israel, as the Lord commanded Moses and Aaron, so did they. And it came to pass the selfsame day that the Lord did bring the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt by their armies. All right, so that was chapter 12 in its entirety. So yeah, what I'll go ahead and do now is I'll read over it, and we'll see what the Holy Spirit brings to the conversation here. I'll read over it again, and I'll go line by line this time, and we'll break this down and see what exactly is going on here. Hold on just one moment. Okay, let me get there. All right, so let's see. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, so now remember Moses and Aaron, we remember reading that Moses was going to be like a god, and Aaron was going to be like his prophet to these people. And so here they are. Lord is talking to Moses and Aaron, telling them what's about to happen. This month shall be you unto the beginning. So they're talking about the Passover. This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. And so if you know anything about the Passover in today's world, the Passover is in April. So basically, this month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. So in our calendar, January is the first month of the year. But according to this, God is saying that the first year of the month is actually April. So he has made the first month their April, or our April. And so in April is when traditionally this Passover is celebrated. And speaking unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb. So we're seeing that God is bringing to them what is going to be, he's telling them the Passover. It's going to be like a festival, like a memorial day that they're going to have to keep forever. And that's why even many thousands of years later, this has been instituted now for probably thousands of years, apparently, because this was long before Jesus came around, and Jesus came around some 2,000 years ago. So we're talking about, what, 3,000, 4,000 years ago nearly, that this Passover, and we even celebrated turning it into what eventually turns into Easter. And so it's a very, it's still around. It's I don't, some people always wonder where, how this is. People say like the Bible is full of nonsense or fairy tales, and I've heard all kinds of things what people have said about the Bible, how it's just fake and unreal. But this is just proof that this is not fake, because we're still celebrating Easter and the Passover till this day. I believe the Passover is now celebrated for 8 days. I don't really celebrate the Passover, so I don't really know, but I do believe, let's see, the Passover. Let's read the Passover. Let's see, what is the Passover? Wednesday, April 8th until Thursday, April 16th. So this will be next year, which again, too, I could tell how it's, if you look at it, it's a little warped now, because in the Bible, it says it was for 7 days. Now they celebrate it for 8 days. For some strange reason, and it's not even the same days. It seems like, because right here what they're supposed to do, we're seeing now the dates. There's a few important dates here, and so we're looking at the 10th day right here. The 10th day is when you're going to go ahead and you're going to pick out your lamb. So you're going to get a lamb, because they're about to sacrifice this lamb, and this lamb, every house has to have a lamb. And of course that's what this is giving, telling, verse 3 and 4 telling you every house needs a lamb, And if your house is too small for a lamb, you need to go to your neighbor. So this is a very communal festival type holiday thing. So this is a very communal holiday memorial Passover thing that it's everybody's involved, and it's very serious to God, because if you didn't do these things right, you're gonna get kicked out of the entire. You're gonna be put out from your people. So it's a very serious. This is not just, this isn't like a holiday we would look at today, like Christmas or so forth, or like I said, Easter or any of these other ones. It was serious. If you didn't do it right, you could lose your status as a citizen, apparently. Which would be, something that would be unheard of in today's country, in this world. But let's see. And then it tells you that your lamb is supposed to be without blemish. It's supposed to be a male of the first year, and it should be from the sheep or the goats. So not just any lamb. You couldn't just sacrifice. God is starting to show, just like when we saw back in Genesis, early Genesis with Cain and Abel. God showed favor to Abel, but not to Cain. And it was, you could say it was all about faith and everything too, but this is kind of starting to show what God is looking for when he's looking for your sacrifices. And he's telling you it should be perfect, without blemish. You're sacrificing this to the Lord. Why are you going to give him an inferior sacrifice, an inferior lamb? So you're not supposed to be sacrificing unworthy sacrifices, making unworthy sacrifices. They're going straight to God, so they should be perfect. They should be the best. They should be your best ones, not your worst ones. So you're always supposed to be giving your best to God. And of course, so that was on the 10th day, you're supposed to pick them out. And then it looks like and you shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month. And the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. So on the 10th day, you get your lamb. On the 14th day is going to be something special. On the 14th day is the actual day that you killed, that you made the sacrifice. Everybody, the whole assembly of the congregation shall kill it in the evening. And they had their ritual. There was a special ritual, and of course they shall take of the blood and strike it on the two side posts. And so we all know this. This is kind of like where you put the blood on the sides of the door and on the top, wherever you're gonna your house. And these are the houses that had the blood, that when the destroyer came out, the people in that house were not killed. They didn't suffer the destroyer. And of course that same night, so this is on the 14th of April, they eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs shall they eat it. So on the 14th night, on the night of the 14th day, they apparently ate their sacrifice, and they had to make sure they ate it with unleavened bread. So that means the bread wasn't rising. It was unleavened, so it didn't have like the yeast or whatever in it that made it rise. And God tells them, again, special ways of eating this sacrifice. You eat of it not raw, nor sodden at all with the water. So you're not supposed to boil it, and you're not supposed to just eat it raw, which, I mean, I guess even in those days, eating something raw, I don't know, perhaps it was something that people did. I don't necessarily think it's, people do it too much in this day and age, but perhaps there's still a lot of people eating raw food. After all, sushi's a raw food, I would say. But he was telling them, don't eat it raw and don't boil it, but roast it with fire. So they had to roast it with fire, with these heads and with the legs and with the pertinence thereof. So let's search pertinence. What is pertinence? Pertinence definition, I don't really know what that is. It's the entrails. Okay, so pertinence is just the entrails. So they were supposed to just cook it pretty much whole without really much with the pertinence, but roasted with fire, his head with his legs and with the pertinence thereof. So he's basically saying you're cooking it quick. Don't even cut the heads or legs off. They were just basically roasting it, a whole lamb almost, it looks like, even with the pertinence thereof, right there with all its insides. So they weren't really cleaning it very well. They were just eating it really quick. God is making them see what is going on, and what's going on is it was something very fast that they had to do. Even the leaven, they didn't have time to let the bread rise. So they didn't have time for the bread to rise or to really clean up this sacrifice and cook. They just cooked the whole thing. And ye shall let nothing of it remain until the morning, and that which remaineth of until the morning ye shall burn with fire. And thus shall you eat it, with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and ye shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. So see, just like what I was saying, he's telling these the Israels, the people, the children of Israel, that they have to eat this quick. This is a fast thing. You're about to flee this nation, is what he was telling them. So don't let anything, cook the whole thing, eat it while you have a chance to eat it, and whatever you don't eat, go ahead and burn it with fire. So they're cooking everything. Remember, the head with the legs, and most people don't usually eat those kinds of stuff, especially the pertinence thereof. The insides, the bowels, and all that. Most of the time, we don't really eat those things. We're really just after the meat, the meaty portion. The rest is kind of specialized foods for, specialized occasions usually, or specialized uses. And so, of course, he's telling them just take the food, eat the food, the edible parts, and burn the rest. Don't even use the rest. Just burn it. You're basically putting it on a fire, eating it, and then cooking what you don't eat. And like he says, eat it with your loins girded. So make sure you're dressed, you're ready to go, and you're eating it in haste because it's a Passover. And this is the reason why, just like we've been reading, there's plagues. And this plague, the 10th plague, the final plague, is the death of the firstborn. For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast. And against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord. Let's see. And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. So he's telling them right now on the 14th night, the 14th day. So we should know, based off of this chapter, Exodus 12, that April 14th is the day that is that night going into the 15th day, I imagine. On the night of the 14th, that's when God came by and killed all the firstborn in Egypt. And that's why the blood shall be, let's see, and anybody who didn't have the blood of this lamb that they were supposed to be sacrificing, and they didn't put it on the doorposts, then they lost somebody. And so it was all the Egyptians, but all the children of Israel did not lose anyone because they had done this ritual that God had told them, this memorial. And of course, this is God's telling them, and this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and ye shall keep it a feast to the Lord throughout your generations. Ye shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread. Even the first day ye shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. So like I said, it's very important that they didn't put leaven. And of course, we'll see this echoed later on with Jesus, when Jesus even tells them to watch out for the yeast of the Pharisees. And he tells them, and his disciples didn't understand, but he was hearkening all the way back to this, that he was telling them, a little bit of that yeast in there leavens the whole bread. So you have to put out all the leaven of your houses, because if you eat any of the leaven, then you're going to be corrupted. So that's what he tells them later on, kind of when he's talking about the Pharisees, when Jesus is talking about the Pharisees, that, they're, they, a little bit of that what they teach them corrupts the whole body. So that's why you're supposed to put away. And so, like I said, God is showing these people how this is very strict. This is something very strict. Like I said, you shall be cut off from Israel. Like I said, you'd lose your citizenship, basically. It'd be like if we celebrated Christmas, or like in today's world, if we celebrated the Passover, and if you ate leavened bread for, this 1 week, then you would lose your citizenship as an American citizen. That's how serious this is for the children of Israel. And of course, like I said, in today's world, for some reason, they celebrate it for 8 days. I'd have to talk to somebody to find out why exactly that is, if that's, And on top of that, like I said, let's see, when is the Passover? All right. So when is the Passover? Like I said, Wednesday, April. So it's not even the same dates for some reason. It seems, like I said, I'm not entirely sure why they do it these ways. I'm looking at this website. They seem to change it quite often. You can see in 2021 it's going to be from March 20. So this is why we always have some sort of a weird Easter. I don't really understand why they do it, but I imagine it's because just like later on, the Jews never really got the hang of it, or never really figured it out, and they rejected God and they did whatever they wanted. And I imagine in today's world it's really no different, and that seems to be the case here. They keep changing it. They don't keep to their year doesn't start on the same time, or either that or they're using stars. I don't really know what they're doing. But it was only supposed to be 7 days, and obviously it was supposed to start from the 7th till the 14th, or let's see, no, from the 14th until for 7 more days. So on the 10th day, remember, of April, that's when they were supposed to get their lamb. On the 14th day is when God actually came and killed all the firstborn. And then starting on the 14th until the 21st, and in fact, I want to say it's right here. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month at even, ye shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at even. So basically from April 14th till April 21st, that's when they're supposed to be observing the Feast of the Unleavened Bread. And that, let's see, and that's why you're supposed to be in that 7 days, you're no bread, no leavened bread, no leavened bread, or you're going to be cut off from Israel. And on top of that, on the first day and on the 7th day, there shall be a holy convocation to you. No manner of work shall be done in them, save that which every man must eat. That only may be done of you. So basically on April 14th was supposed to be what we would kind of, later on, it comes to be known as kind of like the Sabbath. On the Sabbath, you weren't allowed to do anything except for the no work except for the work required that you must eat. And you weren't supposed to go very far, and we'll see all those laws later on when they come up. But if you notice, this chapter does not mention the word Sabbath at all. There is no Sabbath yet. As of right now, God is not giving them the Sabbath. They don't. He's only kind of hinting at it. He's kind of letting it know what's about to, how the Sabbath is kind of gonna work. But basically, right here is kind of where he's saying that on the first day and on the seventh day and on the first day and the 7th day, and by that's the 14th of the month and the 21st of the month. That's the 1st and 7th day of this Feast of Unleavened Bread, okay? And ye shall observe the Feast of Unleavened Bread, for in that selfsame day have I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. There shall ye observe this day in your generations by an ordinance forever. So what is a convocation? And let's take a look. Convocation is large formal assembly of people. So basically on the 14th and on the 21st, they were supposed to have this big assembly of people. So they were supposed to, like we would know it kind of as going to church or whatever. So here they are. He's telling them on the 1st, so which is the 14th day of the month, and the 21st, which is the 7th day of this week. No one, that whole time you can't eat leavened bread or else you'll be cut off from Israel. And on the 1st and 7th days of that week, you need to have a big assembly where everybody comes together. And basically on those 2 days, can't do nothing except for eat. So it's kind of, it's a strange thing where on the 14th, God has been telling them up until the 14th day, you got to be like, that 14th day, you're going to cook that lamb and you're going to do it in haste. But remember, that day you can't do any work. That's the first day of this week, of this Feast of Unleavened Bread. So basically, that day you can't do anything except for basically cook that lamb. And then the very next day they were running out of town that night. 15th they were on the run. So and like I said, it's just going on. 7 days shall there be no leaven. For whosoever eateth that which is leavened, even the soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel. Ye shall eat nothing leavened. All your habitations shall ye unleavened bread. So basically, he's telling them. And so this is here. Then Moses called for all the elders of Israel and said unto them, draw out and take you a lamb according to families and kill the Passover. So basically, these past few right here is just talking about the week that it's going to happen, how it's going to happen. And then right now, this is the start. This is the 14th of that month where Moses is calling them. And he says, okay, today's the day. Kill the Passover. Take your lamb, kill the Passover. And he also tells them, take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the blood. And I don't really know what hyssop is, so I'm going to look it up. A small, bushy, aromatic plant of the mint family. It's some sort of it's a cooking herb, which, dip it in the blood that is in the basin and strike it on the lintel. So there you take the hyssop, this herb, get the blood that, from all this lamb, put it on the two side posts and on the top, on the lintel and the two side posts, and don't go outside until the morning. So God is telling them, all right, now you put your blood, you killed your Passover, you put the blood on your door, now get inside and don't come out until the morning. He goes, for the Lord will pass through to smite the Egyptians, and when he seeth the blood upon the lintel and on the two side posts, the Lord will pass over the door and will not suffer the destroyer to come into your house to smite you. And so you got to observe this thing for an ordinance to thee and to thy sons forever. So God is telling them this is a big proof of God. Like, people always wonder, oh, if God is real, where's the proof? Scientists are always, where's the evidence? Well, this is evidence right here. This is an ordinance that has been going on for many thousands of years now. And it was so important, and what happened was so paranormal, I guess you could say the word. Like, people in today's world, if it happened in today's world, people would say, oh, they would try to look for some sort of natural explanation or something, but really this was something that was unnatural. People knew that this was an impossible thing. It could only happen if a God existed, and it did happen, and we're still celebrating it thousands of years later. So this is evidence right here. This book was written many thousands of years ago. People are still celebrating it. It's kind of close, it's not quite the same days, but it's pretty close. It's, close enough that people, that we should recognize what it is. And this is what it is. These people, one night, this happened, and the entire town of Egypt, and it had to be a lot of people, because later on we do read that in this chapter we see something like 600,000 right here in verse 37. And the children of Israel journeyed from Ramesses to Succoth, about 600,000 on foot that were men. That was just men. 600,000, about 600,000 men, and plus their women and children, obviously, beside children. So this wasn't just like a small occurrence. It wasn't just like a few thousand people that died. No, this had to be probably on the scale of, maybe 100, 50 to 100,000 people, easily, that were firstborns at the time. Who knows how many firstborns there could have been in Egypt if Israel was this large, 600,000 men. I mean, Egypt was probably just as large. So however many families that may have been, and all the firstborn would have died. And not only that, he was also the beast too, the cattle, the firstborn of cattle. So God is, like I said that in a previous study, a previous chapter, that God is saying that he keeps track of everybody, even the animals. He knows their lineage. So God has the best records of anybody out there. He knows everybody and who everybody is and where they come from and so forth. So that's what's going on here. Let me see. That ye shall and come to power. Okay. So yeah, you're just observing this, and he tells them the Lord will give you according as he had promised, that ye shall keep this service. And when it comes to pass that your children say unto you, what mean ye by this service? So why are we even celebrating the Passover many, many years later? And so we could be asking that. We're supposed to be, even to this day, telling our children, it is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover, who passed over the house of the children of Israel, when he smote the Egyptians and delivered our houses. So like I said, this was an impossibility, and yet it happened. And this is a historical fact. People don't want to accept it as historical fact, but a long time ago, something unnatural, seemingly apparently unnatural, happened, in which the firstborn of all of Egypt died. And it's reality. It happened long ago, and we're still remembering it today, even though people don't want to remember it. They're just celebrating it for the sake of it, because apparently not enough parents have taught their children what it means. That's just the way it is. This is, the end of the world. That's just the way it is. You're supposed to tell your children, this is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover, the houses of children, when he smote the Egyptians and delivered our houses, and the people bowed the head and worshipped. And the children of Israel went away and did as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron, so did they. So there it is. It's happening. This is the 14th of April. And it came to pass that at midnight the Lord smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on his throne unto the firstborn of the captive that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of cattle. So even everybody that was an Egyptian, even the prisoners, even the lowliest, from the highest to the lowliest, all of them lost their firstborn. It would have been an unnatural. They just died. Just no accounting for it, no understanding, other than the word of Moses that came to them through the Pharaoh from God. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where there was not one dead. So here he is, Pharaoh, obviously, he's been not really taking heed of Moses because the God has, hardened his heart at this point. But obviously he rose up in the night. So it wasn't even in the morning. He came up at night and he had been told about it. Obviously, Moses had already told him it's going to happen. It's going to happen. But he was pretty unbelieving the whole time. Him and his, his staff or his people were kind of trying to figure out what happened. Remember, they were even trying to recreate them, and they weren't able to recreate them up until like the first, second, and third, or I believe they were able to. The first few plagues they were able to recreate, but then they weren't able to recreate the plagues anymore, and they were probably just trying to discuss it. And I know there's a movie recently that I'm not gonna give it any kind of props or anything because it was a horrible movie that was completely misinterpreted the book of Exodus, but it was called Exodus, and it had, I want to say, Christian Bale. Yeah, Christian Bale was in it. And of course, like I said, don't study that movie thinking that it's realistic, because it isn't realistic. But basically, I don't even know where I was getting in with that. The Pharaoh in that movie also kind of woke up. They just weren't paying attention. They weren't believing it. He was just not believing it. But still, he woke up in the middle of the night, probably obviously thinking like, well, what if? And obviously he did come across his dead child, however old that may be. So right here in the middle of the night, he called for Moses and Aaron and said, rise up and get you forth from among my people, both ye and the children of Israel, and go, serve the Lord as ye have said. So basically, he sends people out to Moses and Aaron. He tells them, get out of here. Just get out of here. Take your flocks, everything that you wanted, and bless me also. Because he's telling them, and bless me also. In my opinion, I guess that kind of seems like the best and only way he can kind of like ask for, say that he's sorry. Like in today's world, if you do something bad, you say, I'm sorry, please forgive me. And he basically tells them, take your stuff and get out of here and bless me also. That's kind of like where he's saying how would I put it? He's giving some sort of authority to Moses. He's recognizing and finally admitting that obviously you have God here, so bless me. So that's kind of like the only way I could think that he would ask for some sort of forgiveness, because he's at this point he sounds like a pretty selfish guy, and just seems like a selfish way of saying I'm sorry by asking him to bless me also. And the Egyptians were urgent upon the people that they might send them out of the land in haste, for they said, we be all dead men. So, of course, it wasn't just the Pharaoh, it was all the Egyptians. All the Egyptians had been hearing about this. By this point, Moses and Aaron were real famous among them because they were telling them all these bad things that were going to happen. And every time they said something bad was going to happen, something bad happened. And at this point, I'm sure the people were really not happy with their own Pharaoh, because they're looking, that's why they get their, Lord gave the people favor in the sight of Egyptians. So the Egyptians started having favor. The children of Israel, they knew that the children of Israel were important, that the children of Israel were special. They themselves knew that they were witnessing a God, a true God, a God like they had never known. They had known gods in word and in their own little ritualistic kind of things, but they'd never seen God or really known a God of works. And this was a God of works this was their 10th plague. And at this point, like I said, I'm sure that by the 4th, 5th, 6th plague, some of these Egyptians probably were saying, please, let the children of Israel go. But even Pharaoh still wouldn't. Probably wasn't even listening to his own people. And at this point, they were probably very sick of Pharaoh. Like I said, if we knew in this day world, if somebody came up to the president and started telling the president this and this and that, if you don't do it, then God's gonna destroy you. And all of a sudden, really bad things started happening. We'd probably get mad at our president who was saying, no, I'm not gonna, we don't negotiate with whatever. And the Lord, let's see, and so they took off. So they run, they take off, and that's why there's before the dough was leavened, their kneading troughs being bound up in their claws. They took off in a hurry, and they did just like Moses told them. They borrowed of the Egyptians jewels and silver, jewels and gold, and raiment. So just clothing. So basically, they took a bunch of stuff from the Egyptians. They plundered the Egyptians without any kind of a war on their part. So this is something like God himself came in and warred against Pharaoh, and he let his people plunder the Egyptians. That's literally what happened here. They plundered them, but it was a peaceful plunder, not like a plunder by the sword. It was more of a get out of here, please take all this stuff and get out of here. Just they gave it to them because they knew God was with them, and they were just begging for some sort of forgiveness in their own way. And let's see, and like I said, he gave people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. They gave them everything they wanted, and they spoiled the Egyptians. So that's what it means. They spoiled them. They took their things. They plundered them. And the children of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 on foot that were men beside children. And I don't have a map. I know I've done maps before. Perhaps I might be able to find some. Nope, don't have them here. Let's see, but whatever. It's they make it quite a bit of distance from Ramses to Succoth, and they take 600,000 people on foot, and a mixed multitude went up also with them, and flocks and herds, even very much cattle, and they baked unleavened breads of the dough which they brought forth out of Egypt, for it was not leavened, because they were thrust out of Egypt. So God is just reminding us, look, they got kicked out. But they also, they were just, please get out of here, leave, leave, leave. And they just were in a hurry, took whatever they could carry, took whatever they could, and they took this bread. And it was unleavened bread because they didn't have any victual. And if you know what victual is, it's just like food or provisions. So that's provisions. They didn't take any food with them. So they just had this unleavened bread. So this unleavened bread, and of course they didn't have any of their lambs. They just ate the lamb the night before, and nothing was supposed to be left. So all they took was this bread. Now the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. And so this harkens back to prophecy that was given unto basically into Israel himself. I don't remember where it is. I'd have to take a look, but it was in Genesis somewhere where God told them that your people are going to be in Egypt for 400 years. And I don't remember where that was. So I'd have to, it was in Genesis, I think it was late Genesis somewhere. Let's see, it comes to me, let's see, it had to be 40 something, 46, 47 maybe. And when Israel finally comes back into contact with Joseph. So Joseph, if you remember, Joseph was the one that was, mistreated by his brothers, and they thought they killed him, but they ended up selling him to the Egyptians. And of course, he ends up becoming, as high as the Pharaoh. And then, of course, the Pharaoh, 430 years later, apparently has forgotten all these people. So, let's see. I don't really remember, where it was, but it was back in Genesis, I believe, that they were told that they would be gone for this long. And so, of course, God keeps this prophecy for them and fulfills it. It was 430 years to the date, he says. And it came even the self-same day. So we know that basically the Egyptians or Pharaoh, that the Israel people, they had when Israel took all his people to go see Joseph, who had become basically Pharaoh, they showed up and they arrived on April 14th. or about April, yeah, I guess April 14th or April 15th. I guess it would be April 15th because on April 15th they're leaving. And so on April 15th, that's when they showed up in the first place. So that's interesting that we can have these dates. We should know these dates. April 15th is the date. So April 15th. Let's see. And let's see, it is a night to be much observed unto the Lord for bringing them out of the land of Egypt. That is the night of the Lord to be observed of all the children of Israel in their generations. And the Lord said unto Moses, this is the ordinance of the Passover. There shall be no stranger. There shall no stranger. So he's telling the people that this was strictly for the children of Israel. Strangers cannot eat of it. So he's telling them after it happens, in the future, which is, past after it happened. It was just a one night deal, all this terror, and we're still thinking about it, memorializing it thousands of years later, even though people don't know what it is that they're kind of celebrating, and they don't see the significance or the importance of it, and they don't feel it, I think, or perhaps, or even believe that it necessarily happened. But it did happen. And he's saying that no stranger can eat thereof. So, of course, only the children of Israel should do it. And if you are, look at it, and he says, if you buy somebody for money, you can circumcise it, and then he can eat of it. And it says, and a foreigner and a hired servant shall not eat thereof it. But, so if you're a foreigner, the foreigners and their hired servants, if they were not circumcised, they could not eat of it. So, of course, the circumcision was part of the, covenant that God had made with Abraham some many years earlier, several hundred years earlier than this. So they were still circumcising, and it was obviously, nearly 500-600 years since Abraham, something like that. And they're still circumcising at 8 days old, and there was a very special thing. They were the chosen people, and that was the mark of their chosen. And I explained, in a different video about why that was. It was basically, like I said, God is keeping track of all of our people, not just the humans, but the beasts as well. So basically, he thinks of us almost like cattle. We are like, we're his servants. And truthfully, that's kind of what we are. And so circumcision is very kind of definitely denoting that this is my cattle, kind of, much like how we brand animals in this day, or put tags in their ears. It would be the same thing. That's what God said here. Do the circumcision, and that's a mark of my brand. That's my brand right there. That's my mark. It's very intimate. It's really denoting the fact that I keep track of your lines. It's the what's being circumcised is the organ that is obviously meant for reproduction. It's the male penis is the reproduction, and it's what's being circumcised, which is just showing that God is in control of their reproduction lines. He keeps track of them, and that's really what that means. And the foreigners, since they were not circumcised, couldn't eat of it. And let's see, and he says, thou shalt not carry forth aught of the flesh abroad out of the house, neither. So he says, when you eat the lamb of the Passover on the 14th of the night, or the 14th of the month, don't carry the flesh out of the house, neither. And so you're also not supposed to break a bone thereof. So he's making this real certain. Don't break the bones, and don't take the flesh out of the house. Just eat it at home, and don't break any of the bones. And of course, this is going to represent this lamb right here is representing Jesus Christ in the future. So this is part of one of the things that is it's mentioned in the New Testament when Jesus Christ dies on the cross. One of the Roman guards come later on in the day when they're on the cross. They come to break the legs of the whoever was up on the cross, so that they would, if you broke the legs, they would suffocate, because they wouldn't be able to hold themselves up, and they would eventually suffocate themselves to death real quick. And that's how they came and killed them quicker than waiting for them to die up at the cross. And so when they came to do that, they came to kill Jesus by breaking his legs. They found him dead already. So he never had a broken leg. He didn't break a bone. So this is kind of a prophecy that is being laid out there. It's being, this lamb is representing Jesus Christ, and that's why this is so important that they need to recognize what happens so they can recognize when Jesus Christ comes. And this is one of the big ones, is that they don't break a bone thereof. And so that's why they were, well, why don't we break the bones? Well, I don't know. Well, we don't know yet. Back when this was happening, the children of Israel did not know why they weren't breaking the bones. Well, it wasn't necessarily that they were told, but it was all to point to Jesus when they came to break his legs. And they did not break his legs. Let's see. And when a stranger shall sojourn with thee, and will keep the Passover to the Lord, let all his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and keep it. And he shall be one that is born in the land, for no uncircumcised person shall eat thereof. So he's telling them, he's putting a distinction between the children of Israel and every other nation. And he's telling them right here, one law shall be to him that is homeborn, and unto the stranger that sojourneth among you. Thus did all the children of Israel, as the Lord commanded Moses and Aaron, so did they. And it came to pass the selfsame day that the Lord did bring the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt by their armies. So, like I said, he has chosen the children of Israel to be his people. He is distinguishing them. He is making it known to Egypt and as well as to the rest of the world through time that the children of Israel are special and they are different, and that if you wanted to become one at this time, they had to be circumcised. And so there was two types of people. There was the homeborn and the strangers. So there was two laws God was telling them. But if a stranger came in and wanted to, and stayed with you and wanted to do all of this and wanted to be like you, then let his males be circumcised. So they could join the children of Israel. They could basically gain, some sort of citizenship by the circumcision and by keeping this Passover. This Passover was that important, and this was what made them the nation. This is kind of like what makes them a nation. Before this, they were just children of Israel. They were basically families, large families of the 12 tribes. But now they're really turning into a nation with its laws, with its citizenship, and it's gonna so forth. We're gonna see how Moses gets information from God later on, and how they start making, the 10 Commandments, and how they're gonna, distinguish who the families of the Levites are gonna be the priests and so forth. But yeah, so this is what's going on. God has showed in Exodus 12. He has done it begins. This is the Passover. He's fulfilled the 10th plague. The Egyptians have finally said, okay, get out of here. And in the same time, God establishes the Passover celebration and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So you're supposed to celebrate it starting on the 10th of the month. You choose your lamb. You prepare your lamb by the 14th. You kill the lamb by the 15th to the 20. From the 14th to the 21st. You're also not eating leavened bread. And on the 14th and on the 21st of the month, there was also the assemblies, the big assemblies of all the people, of all the children of Israel coming together, so that they could on the 14th kill of the as a communal event. They do their sacrifices, and then again on the 21st they rest. And then that whole week they don't eat unleavened bread. And if they did eat unleavened bread, they were kicked out of the children. They lost their citizenship. So this is a huge deal that the children of Israel had very strict laws. God was going to be very strict with them compared to other nations, but he was choosing them, and they were going to be set up as examples for the rest of the world. And that is exactly what we know them as today, the example. And we also come across Jesus Christ, and he becomes the king and so forth. But they are a special people. Everybody else outside of them are basically the heathens, the Gentiles and the heathens. And that's where we are too in this day and age. As a U.S. citizen, we're basically Gentiles. We come from a heathen nation, basically. A bunch of heathens running around in this day and age. It's just the truth. And we see that the Jews had, the children of Israel, they had we know how hard it was, the Old Testament laws to follow. We could not follow the Old Testament laws ourselves. It would just be too difficult for us. We can't, in this, we have movies about, people cheating on their spouses all the time, committing adultery. And according to God's laws, those people all had to be stoned to death. And there's no way in this, you get in trouble if you kill your cheating spouse. Even though that's what God said you should have done, you'd go to jail yourself. So, like I said, there's just no way we could follow these laws, and their laws were a lot stricter and harder and more. Um, they were probably tougher to keep, maybe I would say, just for our time frame. So really, they had it pretty strict. They were a chosen people, and God chose them for a reason, and He was hard on them for a reason because He also gave them the grace that comes. Grace is extended to the rest of the world through them. So this was Exodus chapter 12. I'm just gonna go ahead and end it pretty much right here. That was Exodus 12. If you like this video, please go ahead and like the video and subscribe to the channel for more future chapter by chapter Bible study. Thank you, Jesus, for everything you allow us to do. Thank you for giving us this knowledge of what you've done. This is all historical. And yeah, we'll check out Exodus 13 in the next video. Thank you. God bless you. Amen.